Hi everyone, my name is Paloma Raggo. I'm an assistant professor at the School of Public Policy and Administration at Carleton University, and I mostly teach online. So I thought I would make this really quick videos about different strategies that you could use or adapt if you are in a situation where you either need to put your course online or thinking of building your course online. I am recording this really with the basic stuff. I do have some fancy microphones, equipment, but I am recording this literally with the camera on my computer, the microphone on my computer, a basic video recording software, just to kind of show you that you don't need much and you can produce something that might work for you. To give you a little background, I have started teaching online about 6 years ago when I arrived at Carleton University, and I teach mostly online. I consider myself almost a virtual faculty. Um, three of my three of my four courses are taught online, um, and so when I started teaching at Carleton, I was privileged enough to have kind of the freedom to explore, try new things. And from this, I've learned a couple of things. I've made lots of mistakes, and hopefully, you can reap some of the benefits from me teaching online. Just as a parenthesis, one of the things I find kind of challenging when I teach online or when I record a video is actually looking at the camera. So, what I do typically is I put this little eye post it near the camera so I can have the feeling that I'm talking to someone. So prepare either a picture or something so you can actually look at the camera. It's a little more pleasant for people who are watching your video to feel like you're actually looking at them. I'm not a natural at that, but anyways, that's the kind of tip that I found. Um, I'm gonna talk to you about three broad models that I kind of came up with. So it's not necessarily based on the literature, it's based really on my experience. And there are a lot of things written about teaching online. I'm really talking to you here from the perspective of faculty teaching. And so I do not claim to be a pedagogical expert, but I hope I have learned some things along the way. So the first model that I call, when you teach online or where you want to transfer your online course, and for all these models, I ask people to kind of think about, okay, what is your class about? What kind of class are you teaching? What kind of material are you teaching? And how can you adapt this? A lot of people think that teaching online, or even when you're transferring and you're like taking an in class and putting it online, is just going to be recording your videos or live streaming your class. And you can do that. And of course, in a situation where this needs to happen tomorrow, that might be what you do at first. But if you think a little, there are small changes you can make to kind of avoid transitioning, to avoid, really big problems in transitioning, and kind of making your class a little more engaging, even if you don't have tons of experience. So the first model I suggest, I call it the push pull model. And so what I mean by that is I mean that the instructor pushes knowledge onto the classroom and students take this from the instructor. Um, in in most cases, the push pull model um, is used when you have a class that's more technically oriented, when you have a lot of skill diversity within your class. You have some people that start really at the beginning, some people are really advanced. Um, Also, for the types of classes that need some form of incremental learning. So, you need to build skill A to get to B, to get to C, etc., throughout the semester. So, to give you a concrete example, I teach a course on research method, and although it's oftentimes not the most preferred course by my students. I think they can reasonably appreciate the way it's structured. The way I structure it typically is I have short quizzes that unlock the next module. They watch a little videos, they have maybe a mini assignment to do, a homework, and then they can move on. So they can self-pace throughout the course. So when you have time to plan a course like that, that's really feasible. If you were to translate this now, you need your stats course or your research method course being done online tomorrow. I would suggest to sit down, just think about a few key questions you could ask before class starts, just to make sure that students at least read the material before they show up to your live session. If you're doing live session, if you're recording, then I would advise, think of, for each week that you have prepared or each theme that you're discussing, what kind of bite size can you divide it into? Are you going to talk about variables? So then have a little video about variables. The same way, if you're going to lecture live, let's say synchronously, about variables, have a quiz or at least one question about this that makes sure that your students come prepared to class. And if the students are prepared to your class, the class is going to be much more engaging. What ends up happening oftentimes is that students get really passive. The profs, you don't benefit from a lot of the interactions that you have in class or the body language from your students. So that way, it kind of forces students to engage, particularly for technical skills-oriented courses. The second model I have observed, at least in my practice, is what I call the push-pull model. So it's kind of the reverse. For me, that kind of course, you really see it more in a seminar style. So the first one was the push-pull. The instructor gives the knowledge, students take it, and then, think about it. In the seminar, we're trying to get students to engage into themes, questions, debate. And so how do you do this online? And that's kind of a big challenge. And if your goal here is somewhat related to knowledge production, knowledge co-construction with your classroom, I'd suggest to kind of flip your classroom the same way you would do it online, in a real classroom setting. So let me give you an example. I have a course called The Globalization of Philanthropy, which is fantastic course. The course is interested in the rise of private wealth around the world and how does that affect different policy areas and the types of issues that we can encounter linked to philanthropy around the world. So it's very contentious sometimes. We read things that make students react. So the way I've set it up fully online, but you could see where you could adapt to it again if you had to change your seminar format, is that I utilize the forums on the content management systems that you may have, whether it's Blackboard, Canvas, Moodle. They all kind of have a forum where you can set up a forum. I would suggest setting up a forum either per week or per theme that you have in your syllabi, and ask students at the beginning of the week, or at least 5 days, 7 days before your class starts, before your class where the reading is due start, to either post reactions to the readings or ask a group of students to be in charge of the reading that week, and they kind of lead the discussion. So in my class, students will post video reactions about the readings, and we'll start threads where they ask questions to their peers. The peers will engage in these discussion, and the debate and the discussion will start with the students. Then I come in at the end of whatever period you determine, so at the end of 1 week or at the end of 2 weeks, and I either host a live session where we talk about what happened during the discussion, I sometimes pre-record a more theoretical oriented lecture and then complement this with a live session. So the idea here is not to start with the premise that I should be leading the discussion, but let the students start talking, taking the discussion in different ways. And my role here is to kind of say, okay, we've talked about all these issues. Now let's think critically, theoretically about this, and then have a whole discussion with the class to kind of take it to a different level. I play with some assignments, so some students will lead the discussion online. Another group will actually submit a short, very short a response memo. So I'm sure that there are always some students that lead, some students that have written about the topic. So you can arrange, obviously, your assignments as you want. But the idea here is to really kind of, why not ask students to be the ones posting the videos at first, and then you follow the discussion, then intervene and kind of saying, okay, let's reassess and let's see where we're at. And that's your discussion. That's where you start. And so that's why I say it's kind of flipping the classroom on its head online. So that's what I would suggest if you have a seminar course or something to do. The third type of course that you might be dealing with is a more structured, um, peer engage type of course. I call these courses more project oriented, apply knowledge. It's either self-directed or involves a lot of peer learning. So an example of that in my practice is a capstone seminar. So I teach a capstone seminar where students work remotely with community partners on specific projects. So each group of students is assigned a particular community partner. They define the problem, they discuss, and then I guide each group to develop their projects. So there are different ways, if you're engaged in more experiential learning right now, this kind of course will require from the faculty to really kind of decentralize a little your hours rather than having one course that you teach in a set of 3 hours. Maybe you decide, okay, each group is going to have X amount of my time. And so you can use various tools to follow the progress. What I would suggest um, during the course, because one thing that would be missing if you're taking a face-to-face class and you're putting it online is kind of the interaction, the peer learning that happens in a classroom. And a lot of people think that in an online setting you have less of that, which I think in some cases it might be true, but it depends really how you set it up. One of my advice would be to pair groups. So depending on how the project is structured, how your syllabus is structured, but pair groups at critical points of the project. So the groups see each other's project. And so that really helps groups to kind of understand what's the level expected here. It gives more eyes to see the project. So in my experience, projects have been better because they were assigned peer learners. And students are really good nowadays, even better than us sometimes, to figure out ways to meet online. You can create for them meeting rooms depending on what software you have access to or what apps you have access to for a virtual meeting. I use one called Big Blue Button. It was actually developed here at Carleton. It's an open source, and so you can create virtual meeting rooms, kind of chat rooms where students can meet. But some of my students have met and Google Hangout, on Skype, in different ways, FaceTime. So students are pretty good. You just have to make sure that within the groups, responsibilities are well assigned, but also that all the group members have equal access to technology. If they don't, then your role is to really say, okay, we're going to set up a phone meeting or some form that everyone has access to it. So quickly, some things to keep in mind when you're doing this. And like I said, this video is really kind of just throwing some ideas at you, and then you take what works and leave the rest. So I would really suggest that you use the forums, not so much you as a faculty that you need to monitor everything that's written, because it becomes really overwhelming, but you set clear parameters with your class, and you allow a pre-discussion to occur before either your live session or before you post your video, your reaction videos, or however you decide to make it. But these really kind of help engage the students. And, one of the key motivator oftentimes is participation points linked, but just be clear that it's not about how much people participate, but about the quality of participation. Some students become very anxious because they see all these forum threads. So advise people just log in once, write something, try to engage with at least one or two person, and then move on. And so focus on promoting engagement as well, not just people posting what they think and disengaging. I would advise to keep it very simple. If you use PowerPoint, great. If you don't use it. Just be organized. Like you see now, I literally put this PowerPoint together, and I'm using my own microphone, my own camera on my laptop. So you don't need fancy equipment, but you need either your course to always be organized the same way. So if every week you decide to have a forum pre-discussion, have it every week. Otherwise, it confuses students. Try to not have too many places where they have to click on your website. It's confusing to you and to the students. So just keep it really simple, and you can focus your energy and time, because it takes some time on the interaction on online teaching. One thing that I would really, really suggest is look back at all your assignments. Make sure they are spelled out super clearly, because you think they are and they aren't. I promise you'll have to add some explanation. One thing that has worked really well for me is I make these little videos, what to expect about the assignment, what to expect about the exams, what to expect. And so I attach a short video on an assignment saying, okay, this is the assignment. This is how you should approach. These are my piece of advice, because oftentimes you'll answer all the questions they have with this short video. So at the same time, you reduce the number of emails you're getting about this. And it's important also to remember that some students are very visual, some listen better, some will read the instruction. And so by adding visuals, by adding writing stuff, by adding the possibility of students adding their own videos, you're promoting different skills and different types of learning. And I think that what makes a course really kind of engaging, because everyone can find a little bit that fits for them in it. One thing that I use a lot, and now it's like systematic, I use a lot of schedulers. I use one that's called Calendly. So CALENDLY.com. And so the advantage of using a scheduler is that I can send a link to my students and say, if you need to talk with me, or if you have an email, you want to send an email and the answer is longer than 2-3 lines, take an appointment with me. And so the advantage of the scheduler is that you can limit to the specific periods you're interested of being available. And what I've done is I've created 15-minute slots. So students can book me for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes if they need a longer time. And we connect either online, I call them, or on Skype, whatever's convenient. That's a really great way of cutting down emails. Hey, can we meet on this day? No, it doesn't work. Okay, let's try this. No. So for me, that has been very efficient, and students just know now I need to talk to Prof. Raggo. I just go on her Calendly. So it's calendly.com/praggo, for example. They just go on my page and they book a meeting with me. And that appears automatically on my calendar. So at the beginning of the day, I see, okay, what do I have? Today I have a meeting with that person. And they don't see your schedule. So a lot of people are kind of afraid and saying, oh my God, they see the availability that you propose. So for me, it's very convenient to meet sometimes some students between 8 and 9 at night. So sometimes for students also it's convenient. And so I'll have different pockets of time. And yeah, my time is better utilized like that. And students actually respond really well. So I would suggest trying to use that. I've mentioned recording videos to explain things. One thing that I haven't been as good as doing, but I know that's good practice to do, is maybe on Monday or whatever day you decide, send a weekly short email, short video to your class and say, hey, class, we're going to meet on this day, but try to think about these things, or remember, you need to read this, remember to post, or whatever small interaction you have, if you do it regularly. And again, I say I haven't been as diligent to do this, but it kind of remind students, hey, we're doing this right now. And so it promotes engagement, it promotes you as a person, because when you teach online, sometimes faculty, students become dissociated with who they are, and so people don't really get the sense of the personality. And so through these really small little tools and little tips, it helps make any online teaching a little more personal. So these were really like quick tips, and I've posted a thread on Twitter. So if you want to go check my handle, it's Paloma Raggo on Twitter. And there are like little software apps that I suggest to use. If you have any question, feel free to email me or book me on my Calendly. But I hope this is helpful to some people, and good luck out there. Teaching online is actually quite fun. Thanks.